like me, are in your fantasy football playoffs. So 1-800-920-1140, 916-339-1140 if you want to text or on the YouTube chat. If you have questions for Dave Richards, CBS Sports Fantasy Guru. Dave, before we get started on fantasy football, might as well ask you because we don't know. Can you fix the Sacramento Kings?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so easy.
Could you maybe do part of your I would. You can throw everybody a curveball this week. You've got a show coming up. Just maybe the first 15 minutes on the Kings issues and their lack of depth down low or in general, and what they can do to turn it around.
I think just the simple thing to do is I don't know what to do now. I don't know what to say. I don't really watch a lot of NBA basketball. I watch more college than NBA. And the problem right now is that, like, in college basketball, how many big guys are there? Like, you're talking about getting some down low depth. I don't know if you're going to find anybody that's really good. What's the scouting department like for the Kings, Dave?
Horrible, apparently, because
right, so that's where I would start.
Yeah.
Okay. Because at heart in football, I'm a scout and I love to kind of evaluate players. So I would try and find some people who, whether you got to find them in Europe or in the States, who are good at evaluating young basketball talent and find some diamonds in the rough. But I'll tell you one place you should not look.
Where?
That's the University of Miami Hurricanes basketball team. There is nothing there. You don't have to worry about that team to find some depth for the Sacramento Kings.
You know, it's so funny because one of my things through the years, you know, I'm a diehard FSU guy, but I've often said that based on how they do in college, FSU might have the worst record when it comes to transferring into the NBA and performing. Up until a couple of years ago, Dave Cowens was the only all-star to come out of Florida State, maybe Sam Cassell. But through the years, no matter who it is that they bring in, they inevitably suck. And even the guys now, like the guy with Toronto or Patrick Williams.
Patrick Williams with the Bulls has
always hurt, underperformed his draft position. And then Scotty, whoever the hell with Toronto, I don't know why I'm blanking, but he's really good. He just can't stay healthy. It's kind of neat that both of our teams actually aren't great when it comes to producing NBA.
But the Clippers are getting something out of Jordan Miller, and you'll remember Miller from the perfect game that he had against Texas in the Elite Eight a couple of years back. There might be a banner behind me.
I thought Shane Larkin would be better, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, Shane, and he was a first rounder, and he bounced around the league a little bit, and I think that hurt him that he couldn't have like one team and some consistency from year to year. And maybe that's, I don't know if that's part of the problem with the Kings. You know, I know that there's definitely some core players that the Kings have held on to.
Right.
I feel like maybe the situation has changed a little bit. Maybe the coaching's changed a little bit more than it should.
I don't know. I'm having an existential crisis today with the listeners. The whole show was just me saying, I don't want to be here. I'm here because I'm getting paid. I watched this team last night. They lost again. They're 6-9 at home. I'm here because I have to be, and I have to talk about it for 4 hours. And everyone wants to know the answer. Nobody knows. I certainly don't know. So we're all just going to sit around and have zero influence on anything and talk for 4 hours about a bunch of dudes playing with balls and making millions of dollars. That's where I'm at right now.
I thought you had some pull with the Kings.
No pull. No, if I had pull with the Kings, trust me, things would be a little bit different than they are right now, starting with, I don't know, we would have come into the year with somebody at the 4 that wasn't a G League player. So that being said, no pull on that end, but somebody who is educated and professional like yourself can offer us something out of this segment. For example, I want to ask you a philosophical question, as we often, before we get to specifics, we like to get into the philosophy. Just simply, with playoffs having started or starting, what in your experience, you see hundreds, if not thousands of leagues, what is the biggest mistake people make in the fantasy football playoffs?
There are two. Number one is they don't stay a week ahead of the curve. A lot of fantasy managers, smart, savvy fantasy managers, Dave, they were picking up the Falcons defense last week, and they might have even used the Falcons defense last week, but they did it in preparation for this week because they're taking on the Giants. And so teams that don't have like a slam dunk starter, and it doesn't have to be a DSC, it can be a quarterback, can be a kicker, they try and stay a week ahead. But the other mistake that fantasy managers make, and even I'm guilty of this, is getting too cute with lineup decisions.
Right.
And again, you know you're going to start your stud, but I've had people come up to me this week saying, well, gosh, Lamar Jackson's taking on the Steelers, and it's always a bad game for Lamar Jackson when he takes on the Steelers. Should I start Cooper Rush instead? And I'm just like, listen, man, like I'm ready. If my team goes down, it's not going to be because I benched Lamar Jackson.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I might, and I might regret it. It could happen that we talk next week and Lamar Jackson has another okay game against the Steelers, but Cooper Rush throws 6 touchdowns. And there are people saying, damn it, I knew I should have started Cooper Rush. And it'll sit with you all year. But I promise you that the odds will say that your team will either stink either way, or you'll feel a little bit better and you'll have a more competitive chance to win your matchup with Lamar Jackson versus a guy who is a legit NFL backup caliber quarterback in Cooper Rush. So don't get too cute. Don't start the guy that you just picked up off the waiver wire unless you really have conviction. There's a couple of guys this week like Brenton Strange in Jacksonville, Jalen McMillan with Tampa, Jerome Ford with Cleveland. Great example. Like those guys are in situations where they figure to get a lot of work. We've seen them be successful. Okay, maybe we can buy into them if we're in a pinch. And there are people in a serious pinch at running back because we've lost so many potential starters in the last 7 days.
Sounds to me like you're saying this is the fantasy football equivalent of the dealer showing a face card, you're showing a 17 or you've got a 17 and you're hitting. It's not best practices. Maybe it works, but just because it works doesn't mean you were right.
Right. And most of the time that will not work. Hitting 17.
So if I were to, let's say, here's another one I saw this week, and then we'll move on to specific players. You and I are facing each other in the playoffs. You have Alvin Kamara. Kamara's out, let's say. I go and I pick up the backup. I don't need him, but I hear who's going to play. I pick that guy up.
That guy.
Say that again?
Kendre Miller.
Okay. So I go grab Kendre Miller. I don't need him. I don't start him, but I'm grabbing him from you. In your mind, I'm not asking if it's legal or not. I'm saying, is that ethical? Are you okay with somebody doing that?
Yes, 100%. That is part of the game that's happening to me in a dynasty league that I'm in, where I had Jordan Mason and Isaac Guerrero, and I was the bet there was Christian McCaffrey is not going to be great, and these are guys that I like long term. And now here I am in the fantasy semifinals. Mason's on IR. Guerrero's not expected to play. My opponent went and picked up. Not only is Patrick Taylor on a roster, but my opponent picked up Keyshawn Vaughn and Israel Abanikanda. These are real people who play running back for the 49ers. My opponent isn't taking any chances. He's making sure that I can't get my hands on a 49ers running back to replace the guys that I've lost. And it's smart to a degree. I don't know if this is the best example of that, but what you suggested is very smart. Now, what would be unethical is if you, my opponent, knowing that I had Alvin Kamara, you pick up Kendre Miller and then you cut Kendre Miller. And now Kendre Miller's on waivers. And
that's dirty.
And then you go and you pick up Jamal Williams, who's going to be the backup to Kendre Miller in New Orleans. And then you cut Jamal Williams. And you go through the entire list of free agent running backs and you add and cut all those guys. That's unethical. As long as you carry the players on your roster and your roster is legal, fair game. Totally allowed. We call it playing defense in fantasy. And you know what? If that happens to you with Kamara, you should have had Kendre Miller on your bench all along.
You and I are in a league together. There's a guy that's out of it, but we're just before the trade deadline. He's got a couple players I want. I offer him, not a horrific deal, but a deal that nobody should take. But I also offer him off-site $100 to go towards his league fees. Are you okay with that if you're a commissioner?
No, you're not allowed to give something that can't be used in the fantasy league. You can't buy somebody lunch as part of a trade. Okay. Now, listen, if the trade is fair and then you decide after the trade, I'm going to take my buddy out for lunch, that's a different story. But if it's an unfair trade for the league, but there's a $100 exchange, that's unethical. That's a technical foul. That's not allowed.
Lamar Jackson or Jordan Love?
I'm not only am I going down with the ship when it comes to Lamar Jackson, I'm saying that like even I'm not expecting a bad game from Lamar Jackson. I think the Steelers defense is in trouble. I think this is a Ravens statement game playing at home against Pittsburgh. And certainly after they lost to Pittsburgh, I think they can put up some numbers, and I think Lamar Jackson will actually break through and have a very good game. I'm confident in him. This sounds silly to say he's a top 3 quarterback. He's always a top 3 quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not changing my opinion on Lamar Jackson. The matchup's tough, but it's not impossible. And I think that this Ravens offense will be very good.
Same if the choice was Jackson and Jared Goff, I assume.
Yeah, Goff is someone I am nervous about. He does have a terrible track record of playing in cold weather. 18 career games where it's 50 degrees or colder. He's been over 20 fantasy points 3 times, and only once in 8 games with Detroit. His track record outdoors with Detroit, just regardless of weather, also isn't very good. And his track record against Chicago isn't very good. So I would be a little hesitant to trust Jared Goff for a big game this week, but still a starter.
Patrick Taylor Jr. or Tim Patrick, flex slot PPR.
This is a desperation call. I think you go with Patrick Taylor, because he's going to touch the ball more, I think. We don't know how the 49ers are going to deploy these running backs. Taylor's the one that we're just kind of assuming is going to be the lead guy. He's never been the lead guy before in his NFL career. I would be very hesitant to trust either of them, but I do think that, there's a chance Tim Patrick catches 1 pass for 15 yards.
Sure.
He's been great lately. Doesn't mean he's going to go and be great this week. I would chance it with the running back unknown there. But I'm sorry that's your you really can't get Jalen McMillan off the waiver wire. It's really down to one of those 2 guys. I would check waivers to see who else is out there. Maybe there's somebody better.
Lastly, for you, I've got about 17 different Patrick Mahomes related questions. Mahomes or Stafford, Rodgers, Wilson, Mahomes or Stafford, Mahomes or I guess we can couch that by just giving me your overall thought and ranking of Patrick Mahomes this week.
I'm nervous about Mahomes, Dave. I'm not sure how mobile he'll be because of the ankle. I think push comes to shove, he will run. I just don't think he'll be as fast, and then that he could always re-aggravate the injury, which would be a problem. And he hasn't been outstanding as a thrower this season to begin with. And he's getting Marquise Brown back, but I would imagine a very conservative game plan for the Kansas City Chiefs, where the only way that they'll try and air it out is if they're chasing points in the second half. I don't know if that's possible. I think this could be kind of an ugly-ish, low-ish scoring game between the Texans and the Chiefs. And I've watched the Texans defense twice now over the last week. I watched their game against Miami twice, I should say. They look ready. They look playoff ready.
Fair of me to put Hollywood Brown in the Sammy Watkins All-Stars Hall of Fame?
Yeah, he's there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's a Hall of Fame. I think
it's
we talked about this.
You know what I mean? We have our Alf Hall of Fame. We have our Sammy Watkins Hall of Fame.
I think it's just a hall.
A room of fame.
A room of dudes. A room of sadness. Right. I know the city we could build it in.
I know we could. What's going on with what can everybody tune in and listen and learn from your pretty face today?
So listen, this is crunch time in fantasy football, Dave. I would expect that you would know this even if you're not participating in it with your fantasy teams. I'm sorry if that's too soon, but everybody else that's out there and still playing fantasy football, go to YouTube, search for Fantasy Football Today, or I learned this, you can search for FFT CBS. So if you don't feel like typing a bunch of letters, just use 6 of them and a space bar. FFT CBS. Our videos will come up every week. We do start and sit in 2-part episodes. We just wrapped part 2 today. And so it's going to be there waiting for you to help you make start sit decisions. And then today, 10 a.m., CBS Sports Network, we have Fantasy Football Today. We'll talk some player props as well. Get you ready for Week 16 so that you can win and make the fantasy finals in Week 17.
That's Dave Richard, CBS Sports, absolute guru. Will help you through. Look, these things are won in the margins. That's why you need all the advice you can. I strongly suggest you tune in and watch David. Of course, while you're simulcasting and listening to Alan Stiles at 10 a.m., of course, you can do both. Take notes, do your thing. We don't want to take audience from one or the other. You can run both. People have 2 screens, Dave.
Listen, the best part about the Sports Network show, yes, you can watch live. You can either DVR it or it'll also be on that YouTube channel and a few hours later. So either way, you can listen to Alan, and then when you're winding down today after work, you can watch us on YouTube. Fantasy Football Today.
Bless you, Dave. Appreciate you. We'll talk to you next week. Good luck this
weekend.
Holidays,
Dave. Happy holidays to you
and
everybody out there. Merry fantasy points.
One of my favorite things from a few years ago. You know what I'm talking about. Have a great holiday, and we'll talk to you soon, brother. Take care.
You got it, man. Be good.
That's Dave Rich. CBS Sports. We'll take a quick break.